2023 has been one hell of a year. We are nowhere near where we thought we would be at the end of the year. But we have accomplished so much that it's worth celebrating anyway. I'm Taryn, this is Logan, and this is Max. Our life rarely goes as planned, and this story is no different. But we are determined to rebuild our beautiful steel boat, even stronger than she was before. And we're bringing you along with us. We started this year off with spray foaming the V-berth and the galley. It felt so good to get some things back together after spending a year tearing things apart. Feeling good about the bow, we moved on to the cockpit to work on cleaning up some more rusty spots we knew we had, which of course led us to some extra work that we didn't know was there. So what that means is that we have another big chunk of steel that we're going to replace. But it mostly led us to small jobs that we knew needed to be done, and to things that were fairly easy to fix. After finishing the small jobs, we had one more job we needed to fix for safety purposes before we were able to move on from the fabrication work: moving the cockpit drains. We thought the job would be pretty straightforward after all the work we had done on this boat, but of course, we were wrong. In order to fix the drains, we needed to remove the bulkhead between the aft locker and the aft cabin. We knew there was condensation issues here, but we didn't expect it was going to lead to anything horrible. Then we found this, which as it turns out was only the beginning. So that's on the bottom of a piece of wood. And as you can see, there's just like layers and layers of paint. Good focus, there we go. Rusted underneath them. There wasn't a proper drain from the aft locker, so the water must have kind of just accumulated underneath there.
We definitely found the worst spot in the hull so far. There's definitely holes in the hull, in between the supports for the rudder shaft. And it's an absolute, just the worst place to try and get into. Most of it's underneath those fish plates that have been put on the bottom.
Oh yeah.
I guess that's probably the reason why.
We kept chipping at it, checking under all the ribs, and unfortunately things only got worse. The further we went, the more rust we found, and some of it was pretty bad.
So this is what we were looking for. And that is some pretty bad scale. So I don't know if there's a pinhole in the weld or something. But yeah, makes a mess of things.
That spot we showed you was, in fact, a hole, and it wasn't the only one. So we decided the best option was going to be to cut out some hull plates and to put in new ones. See along here in particular.
That's where the ribs were. And that's the pitting.
Yeah, and it's really hard to tell in the camera, but some of those are pretty deep and pretty much through the hull, so it's the worst.
There's where the hole is.
It was quite a bit of struggle. We got one new hull plate in, and then moved on to cutting out another. But none of that fixed the original holes we found around the rudder shaft, so more work had to be done to patch those.
I finally got the patches done to the main rib running just ahead of the steering. Patched the thin hull plating that was above the skeg because it actually went through in one spot.
Next, we removed the engine so we could get under it to do some work. We took the shaft out so we could replace the cutlass bearing, which of course did not go as planned. We took a break from that and tried to put the rudder back in.
Okay. You gotta come. It's gotta come back a little bit.
I don't have it twisted at all. I'm trying to push so that it will go. Hold on, I'm coming up there.
What?
The whole skeg's moved.
Oh no.
Nothing's lined up anymore.
We thought this had fixed it, but it turns out we were wrong. But more about that later on. The next job was digging into the water tanks, which of course were full of rust. We welded the thinnest spots, which actually turned out to be the most miserable job of the year. And then we moved on to actually putting some stuff back together on the boat. Eventually, we did finally move that drain. A mount for our new autopilot was built and installed, and we went back to struggling with the damn crooked skeg. We dug a hole to drop the skeg into, air arced out some welds, and straightened things out before re-welding the skeg.
Nice. Yeah, you're all good.
Next was more small jobs. Hiring someone else to do a big job, and then the crazy job of actually getting some paint on the boat.
There we go.
We worked our butts off to try and get the primer paint on and all of the fairing on before we left for a 2-week holiday. But despite hours and hours of work, it just wasn't enough. And this meant that we added at least 2 more weeks of work onto the project as we had to re-sand all of our paint before putting fairing on top of it. Getting the sanding and fairing to the point where we were finally ready to paint took months, way longer than either of us expected, and it still isn't anywhere near perfect. But eventually we got to the point where we were ready to put on bottom paint, and a fancy, shiny top coat too. It was such an amazing moment to see our boat all coated in one color of paint for the first time ever, and it felt like such a huge accomplishment. But we still had so much more to do. Since then, we have installed a new cutlass bearing, put the engine back in, closed up the water tanks after some messing around and fixing things, and found more rust in the bilges, some of which led to more holes through the hull. But that's a story for another time. Thanks so much for being a part of our journey this year, and an extra big thank you to all the people who physically helped us on the boat this year. as well as to everyone who liked, commented, subscribed, and especially everyone who joined us on Patreon. We appreciate every single one of you. Here's to hoping 2024 brings us less boat work and more time on the water. See you next time.